So what is spirituality anyways? What does that word even mean? I know for the longest time I thought it was just a word that represented a bunch of woo-woo fairy tale kind of nonsense stuff. And a lot of people, now that I've really started to step into this world and started to teach this stuff, a lot of people still have that idea of it. Still have that feeling of, maybe Joe lost his mind or Joe's just doing this crazy thing. So I'd love to kind of break down what spirituality is, or what it feels like, at least for me, so that there's less of a gap between people who think it's nonsense and people who just tell you, you are the universe. Which is kind of true, actually, but it's just too big of a leap for people to all the way understand all the way through. And so if you think about your whole life, this is really valuable for me. Think about your whole life before you ever learn to meditate or explore yourself. What are the things that you do? Well, everything you do is, the vision that I think of in my mind is like on a desert road. You walk forwards, and everything you do is a response to a sensory perception in one of your five senses. And then all of those senses are like wired into this computer that is your intellect that processes what they mean and then acts upon them. It's pretty much a dramatized version of what we did all through evolution. And so all of this just kind of, it just leads towards survival, it leads towards fitting in, it leads towards, having a little bit of fun every now and again, but it doesn't really lead towards total fulfillment. And I think that's why a lot of people get stuck in this feeling of like, is there any more than this? Like, just we call it like playing the game, or in the Matrix, or stuck in the process, or on autopilot. It's easy to feel like you're on autopilot because when you get good at the predicted responses to the sensory perceptions, because your intellect just runs patterns, when you get used to that stuff, you begin to kind of continue to do the same things over and over and over again, or just slight variations of the same things. And so then the question a lot of people start to have is, what is life? Who am I? What's going on? What is all this stuff? And that question is really the first question in the process of spiritual seeking, is spirituality. So spirituality is like all of the process of spiritual seeking. But the funny thing about it is, spirituality isn't anything you actually do, right? I mean, you could kind of argue that like it's the establishment of habits of like meditating and journaling and things like that, and those are really, really important. But ultimately, the spiritual process is the act of undoing. It's the opposite of everything you've ever done. So on that desert road, like I mentioned a little bit ago, it's kind of like we're always taught to be walking forwards. And as you walk forwards, maybe I could use the camera here as a description. As you walk forwards, new things come into your periphery, or you see new things on the horizon. Or I should say, yeah, on the horizon, not your periphery. And that's like our way of learning. That's like our way of like reading books. That's our way of like listening to the outside world, right? But when you stop and you begin a process of spiritual seeking, then you're walking backwards, and it's this holy fuck, what's going on kind of situation, because you're looking inward, you're looking down into you. You're not looking outside of you or up for a god, you're looking inside of you and down into your truth. And you begin to find that your truth is actually much more exciting than any story of any god ever was. And there's also no rules in there. And they don't have to be. Because when you're loving yourself, and you're in love with yourself, the outside world is a manifestation of your love. You don't have to have rules of thou shalt not kill, because you wouldn't kill yourself. You don't have to have rules of thou shalt not steal, because you wouldn't steal from yourself. You just love yourself. And your inside love manifests into this whole beautiful situation of outside love. So that's the process of spiritual seeking. You begin to walk backwards and explore all this new shit. Like, how could you possibly close your eyes and see? How could you possibly shut off your ears and hear? Or like completely tune yourself out from the world and learn from yourself? Sounds nuts, but it's what happens. And once you begin to experience these things, you begin to realize that, holy shit, life was always just beneath the surface of what it looked like. It was always so much more amazing and so much more beautiful than you were ever taught from outside of you, right? Because nobody from outside of you can give you the experience of what's inside of you. All I can do is just be from my experience of what's inside of me, the real experience of what's inside of me, and then impart upon you this curiosity for yourself. And so that's exactly what I do with all these videos. I don't have a target audience, I don't have a target demographic. My message is received by humans everywhere, because all humans want to be, when they're ready, You know, typically when something happens that shakes you out of this intellect response mode, that's kind of insane, but everybody's so used to it that it's prescribed now by everybody. But once you finally get to the point where that's not satisfying you, you're serving you, or something shakes you out of it and, like, you know, severs your connection to that being your only truth, then you begin to say, like, oh, what? Maybe there's more. Maybe there's more inside of me. And the more and more, let me kind of give you I don't want to spoil the ending for you, but let me tell you what my experience has been like. The more you dig into yourself, it's a lot like a well. A meditation recently came through for me. This metaphor came through meditation recently. That all of us are like owners of the top of a well, right? And up in the surface, there's like no water. It's like a well in the desert. There's like no water, and all of us have our own well. And then we're in this competition of who could build a bigger and bigger bucket and impress each other by who has a bigger bucket and a bigger well house and a bigger this, that, and the other thing on the surface. But inside the well, there's shadows. Inside the well, it's scary. Inside the well, like, there's no instruction manual, like how to go down there. And so all of us are just at the surface, like bartering and trying to figure out who's got the better well and who's got the better example of success on the top. But we're not actually using the well. And so what we do is we try to impress each other, and it's almost like there's a competition for who has the best well for the day, and then somebody comes around with bottled water. You know, so like we show off the surface level stuff and then get rewarded with a crappy little bottle of water wrapped in plastic. But what spirituality is, what encouraging the process of spiritual seeking is just trusting that there's something beyond your shadow. Looking inside of yourself and saying, hey, maybe I'm not broken, I just don't know me. And so you look into that shadow every day, and it takes courage. This is where courage comes in. It takes courage to look into the shadow and be like, what the fuck? I don't know what's going on. Why am I just crying all the time? I'd much rather just go to a movie and forget about it. I'd much rather go to church where they tell me how to get to all this stuff instead of going inside of me and finding it myself. And it's scary. It's really scary. You keep going into that well, and then you find that there's a reservoir of the water that all of us, this whole time, have been seeking in everything we did. Literally everything you did. Everything from going to the bar, to finding a girlfriend, to going to school, getting a job, surviving, deciding not to kill yourself. Like, all of it is because you hope there's bliss somewhere. But you don't have to hope anymore once you find it. Once you find this place that you can go back to every day, then it's just an experience of your own reality. It's in you. It is your truth. And it's a miracle. It's a fucking miracle. And it's available to you. But it takes it takes work. It's a challenge. And so try that. See how that feels for you, my friend. Let me know what you think. Let me know what your definition of spirituality is, or what it feels like to you, because I think that's a critical part of the whole process, is for us to know how it's being experienced by others too, so that we can all grow together. You know, you don't want to be the only enlightened person in the whole world. That would suck. So let me know what you think, my friend. Thank you.